Hello and welcome to Media7. I'm Russell Brown. Now, it's a fair bet that each Easter the news will be much more about road tolls, rain and retail than the resurrection. And yet there are places in the media landscape where that's not the case, where more is contemplated than the next chocolate egg. So what's the state of the Christian media and Christianity in the media? Jose Barbosa takes a look.
It's Easter again, and with that comes the usual stories about traffic, the road toll and tasty breads. Yes, Easter is all those things, but it's also a pretty bloody important time of year for our Christian brothers and sisters. But those who would spread his message never had to compete with today's crowded marketplace of invasive head weevils. So from the Catholics to the Orthodox to the non-Trinitarian, how does the modern church engage with the community? The Pope hits the road visiting territories around the world, and that means hitting non-traditional countries where Christianity is increasing in popularity.
I saw him pass on his way through, and the truth is I was so excited my throat closed up.
In Auckland, St Matthew and the city's string of controversial billboards, often thought up by ad agencies, almost guarantees coverage. It's been picked up by other churches, although the results can be less than witty. Other ministries are trying new tactics, like the Presbyterian Youth Ministry. This Easter they're providing a free service where you can follow the story of Jesus through a series of real-time tweets and texts. They're written as if they're by people actually witnessing him arrive in Jerusalem, or slapping around some moneylenders.
Jesus just walked into the temple and pushed all our tables over. It took ages to pick up all my money again. What's his problem?
Kiwi Easter's aim is really just to present the Easter story in a way that people can understand. As a church, we've been doing this for centuries, and my 7-year-old daughters don't remember a time before iPhones. My 18-year-old students don't remember a time before texting. So really, it's just a group of people communicating the way we know. It's nothing new. It's just new because of time.
There does, however, appear to be a trend to engage the secular community. For example, Radio Rima is the country's longest-running Christian radio station, hence our horrendously dated footage. The station is currently trialling a morning show aimed at a secular demographic.
Because I just went and stole my mum's soda stream from her house.
The old classic square one, it goes pss, pss, pss.
There's faith-based youth organisation Zeal. They use media production to aid youth development, producing, among others, this video for Auckland Christian hardcore group Jurassic Penguin.
The other side is just seeing all these kids working until 3 in the morning when most of them are just playing video games or getting drunk, and suddenly they're pouring all their passion, all their energy into getting this music video out there and helping out a band. I mean, it's one of the coolest things to be a part of.
And there's the 40-year-old Christian Broadcasting Association, which has a fairly unequivocal goal.
CBA is all about communicating the Christian faith in mainstream media. We know from radio surveys that more than 85% of our audience do not regard religion or spirituality as a primary interest in their life, which means we're reaching large numbers of people who are really unlikely to ever turn up at church.
That's just the tip of the hot dog. Christian media are numerous and diverse, but who are they talking to, and what's been said back?
Well, it's just the beginning.
Jose Barbosa there. I'm joined now by the manager of the Christian Broadcasting Association, Phil Guyon.
Hey.
The news editor of Challenge Weekly, Lavinia Natoko.
Hi, Russell.
And a man who has long been the Anglican Church's voice in the media, the Reverend and former Bishop Richard Randerson. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Now, Phil, CBA's been around, as we heard just there, for 40 years. How did it start?
It all began when a bunch of radio guys wanted to start a pirate radio station, and they went to a businessman who had a boat and started the Hauraki Pirates. And they asked him if they could have his boat, and he said, you're welcome to have the boat on the understanding that you consider taking some programming if you think it's up to scratch. And John Hawkesby was working at the bank at the time, and that ended up being his beginning into media.
That's an extraordinary story, and I wonder why, until you told me that, I did not know that.
Yeah. Well, it is a great story. The sort of Christian pirate radio was pretty radical in its day, I guess.
Indeed. And so I gather from that that you have always been in that position of presenting a Christian message in secular media. That's what you do.
That's certainly the idea, yeah. The idea of CBA is not to be sort of preaching to the choir, but to be out there engaging general audiences. The media, you know, is the place where we exchange ideas and butt up against each other, and talkback radio is a classic case of that. Another one, your blog. I was amazed at the traffic on your blog. And
I was too, yes.
Divergence of opinion and robust discussion and so on. So yeah, that's certainly where we aim to be.
So you're up for the debate?
Yeah, indeed, and to present it respectfully and to engage creatively. Yeah.
Lavinia, are you doing something slightly different than that, in that your Challenge Weekly does go to believers, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. We're Russell. We're for the Christian market. We've been going for as long as Rima, actually, over 60 years now, and our target market is definitely the Christian market. Our stories are aimed at Christians. We aim to sort of a bit cliched here, but inspire, make an impact on the church, and let Christians out there know what the church is doing in New Zealand and overseas, of course.
You use those words, inspire and inspirational, quite a lot when you talk to our researcher. Can you talk a bit about that? Who are you inspiring and how?
Well, we tend to see the secular media. Often when you look at the news, secular media, it's a lot of negative news. As I say, no news is good news. With us, we're called Challenge Weekly Christian Newspaper, good newspaper, because we try to give news that is good and is, as I use the word again, inspiring. So we tell stories about people out there that are doing good, role models in the sports field, for example. You see in the secular media so often sports people getting drunk, falling over. You know, we try to look at the sports people out there that are doing good. That Christian people are Christians, obviously. We have DJ Forbes, for example. We covered the captain of the Sevens team. Obviously, Michael Jones and the Ironi Clarks of the day, very well-known Christians out there. And we do a lot of testimonies of people whose lives have been changed, dramatically changed through coming to the Lord, or to, as we say, a conversion experience. And in saying that we are for the Christian, we have a Christian audience, we want to reach everyone as well. We don't want to say, okay, just a Christian, pick it up. We want everybody to be able to read our paper. So
I imagine that sometimes you must also cover stories that are mainstream news as well. Does that happen often?
Yep, we do a lot of social issues. We are very concerned about, obviously, the state of society, as I'm sure everybody is, not just Christians. We're looking at things at the moment like at the recent issue with afterbirth abortion. That was discussed by two bioethicists in Australia. We're very concerned about that. We highlighted that on our front page. The response.
Which, interestingly, I think is an issue that most of us didn't want to think about or talk about.
I mean, it actually, we had on our front page that the idea was abhorrent. And it is abhorrent. And I don't think to just Christians. I think to a lot of people would find that abhorrent. And again, on the other side of the scale is euthanasia. We've got a private members bill coming up. I mean, obviously it's going to have to be drawn from the ballot box, but, the giving early exit is called dubbed the early exit bill. So we're also looking at that as well. And so basically what we're trying to do is raise awareness amongst Christians that these things are happening out there, and to become active, to do, write to your members of parliament, or we're sort of like Bob McCroskey does with the lobby group that he runs, and so that's what we do as well.
Now, Richard, you've also touched on these issues as well, haven't you? Some 10 years ago you were on the Royal Commission on Genetic Modification, more recently on the government's Ethics Committee on Fertility. Yep. How do you see your roles on those bodies? Because you're not, in some ways, you're not an obvious pick.
It depends what sort of expertise you're looking for. I mean, on the Royal Commission, it was run by Sir Thomas Eichelbaum as a judge. We had a scientist on it, a doctor, and I was the kind of ethics community person, which people didn't quite know what that was, I think. But when we saw all the submissions coming in, there was a box on a template about ethics. It was often blank. Or you'd get a statement like, we always try to act in an ethical manner. Or they'd run the inner code, like honesty and transparency and confidentiality. I mean, all these sort of important but inner type things, but not a clue about whether we should be doing GM at all. And so I think one of the things on the Commission, I said to the other commissioners, I said, we really need to sit down and write some principles that we'll measure this by. They were sceptical. They said, well, who are we to say this? But we did it over coffee one morning, and we sewn on the whiteboard. We had 7 principles we came up with, and that became the criteria, the measure by which we examined all the evidence on scientific, environmental, medical, those kinds of things. So it's not easy to do that, but you've got to have a set of principles which you then merge into the context of whatever's being discussed.
In some ways, that's quite an establishment role, isn't it? You've been the voice of the establishment church in the media as well. Is that fair?
Well, I've been a voice, but probably a pretty prominent one, going back to industrial mission days in Auckland in the 70s, and then Social Justice Officer for the Church in the 90s in the height of the Ruth Richardson onslaught. That's true. And more recently in examining theology, because I feel one of the sad things for the church today is that in the minds of many people there's a whole lot of caricatures and Sunday school stories, science versus religion, which is such a futile debate, because there's no contest. I mean, religion's not about science, it's about how we understand the world and live in it. Scientists can tell us about the Big Bang and evolution, which I'm, take their word, Dawes, accept all of that. So it's unpacking a lot of these myths that people have about religion, and kicked along by people like Richard Dawkins, fundamentalist caricatures about God. Daniel Brown, great novels. I love Dan Brown's novels, but his fantasies about Jesus and Mary Magdalene, people are not able to critique it, and they say, Dawkins said that, Dan Brown must be true then. And so there's no capacity, I think, to critique some of the caricature that comes across. So I've tried to challenge that, often taking a bit of flack for it, but...
and sometimes being misreported, but we'll talk about that after the break. We'll pause now and return after the break with more on Faith in Media.